Welcome to the woods. It's actually a really nice day up here. Almost like spring. Now, if it sounds like I'm slurring a bit, I've got a little bit of a dodgy tooth at the back, which is giving me a bit of jip. But we'll plough on and we'll have a chat. Almost like spring. It is only 4 degrees here. But blue skies, no rain. We can count our blessings. And I advertised this video as a way we could give the system a bloody nose. And I'll get on to that. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's talk about why. Why would we want to push back against a system, against this system? And the reason I'm asking that question, the reason I'm going to point out a few things, is that I've had this conversation recently, and I was talking about parallel structures, parallel systems, parallel society. And I got on to the subject of a parallel economy and a parallel currency. And the person I was talking to said, it isn't really that bad that we would need to look at an alternative currency or an alternative economy. Things aren't at that stage, and I was shocked because it seems that people forget really quickly what happened over the last 2 years, what's happening now, and what they have planned for us going forward into the future. Only a few years ago, my government told me I was to be locked in my home. They told me who I could see and when I could see them. They told me how long I was allowed to go outside. They told me I had to shut my business. If I didn't, I would be fined, arrested, and could face imprisonment. They told me I couldn't go and see my father, who was very ill. They tried as hard as they could to get me to take a vaccination that we now understand had not been trialled correctly. And the information that they were well aware of was not presented to the public. People forget that. The reason my government did those things is because they could. Now, there's a lot of information that they gained from doing these things, and there's certainly a lot of information that they'll need going forward that they got from doing those things. So I would say, just based on that, it is certainly time to look at an alternative. But it didn't stop there, did it? They did coerce people into taking a medication. They threatened people with unemployment. They used every trick they could to make them feel like a social pariah. They managed, in many cases, to turn the majority of people against the minority. And yet still some of us held out. But people forget that. And I listened to a doctor in the UK, and another doctor in Germany, and another doctor in Australia, all of them saying that there is a problem with the mRNA vaccine, that the spike protein is causing heart damage. In a study done in Germany, the autopsies of people that had died suddenly, when it came to light that most of them had severe heart damage, and that heart damage seemed to be linked to the spike protein in the mRNA vaccines. And yet my government is not looking at this, and it's not looking at the excess deaths. 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 a week. And their glib comment that it's probably down to an interruption in healthcare due to their decisions during the last 2 years. They don't know that. They haven't checked that. It's just an excuse. And they seem very, very reluctant to do any testing. You'll note on the statistics that are available on these 2,000 people that die every week, in excess of what we're used to, they will not list if they're vaccinated or not. And that leaves us asking questions to which there seems to be no answers. So not only did they imprison me, force me to shut down my business, deny me access to friends and family, financially hit me hard, they then tried to coerce me into taking a medication that now seems to be responsible, at least in part, for thousands of people dying every week. So maybe it's certainly time to look at an alternative. And I mentioned in my last video how encouraged I was to see different groups, people starting real life groups, some to do with culture, some to do with socializing, social events, others to do with politics. And all of these groups outside of the current system. All of these groups in opposition to all of those things I've just spoken about. All of these groups comprised of people who have not forgotten and understand that a new path needs to be forged. With these new groups, with these new businesses started by people who have not forgotten, we're seeing the emergence of a parallel society, parallel systems. And we are going to need an alternative currency. One of the main reasons for that, we all know that coming relatively soon will be the central bank digital currencies. Be that because the current system is going to collapse, or be that because it offers those in power ultimate control over everything you do. We will see these central bank digital currencies run alongside the financial system that we understand. But I know that everybody watching this from the UK will have seen those banks closing on the high street. These banks are closing because they understand they will not be needed. As this new currency is rolled out, cash will be taken away. Our ability to use cash will be stripped from us. That's what we need to replace. That is the discussion we need to be having. And introducing a currency isn't difficult. It's been done locally in this country. It's been done locally throughout Europe and probably globally. In Bristol, they have the Bristol pound, or they did up until recently. And there's other localised areas that have their own little currency, and that's to encourage business and people to spend their money locally. They're only accepted locally. Great idea. And it works. So these things aren't new. And these things could be national. There's no reason why not. They usually fall down because people don't use them enough. But I want you to imagine how many people would like to retain cash. Quite a few. How many businesses would still like to deal in cash? There's going to be many. The ability to spend your money without it being tracked and traced is very important for your freedom. To have a financial currency that cannot be stopped, altered, hindered, restricted by the state is of utmost importance. So it's a discussion we need to have. And it's one thing they don't want us to have. If we retain that ability to make and spend our own money without them controlling it, a lot of what they have planned won't be possible. Now, most of these currencies are local, as I've said, but not all of them. If you look further afield, in South Africa, there's a town called Orania. Most of the people from Dutch extraction. And they have their own currency. And everybody uses it. Now the thing that binds all of these currencies together is that usually they're pegged to the local legal tender, or the legal tender in that country. So the Bristol pounds are pegged to the UK pound. 1 UK pound will buy you 1 Bristol pound. The same in South Africa. 1 Ora is worth 1 rand, I think it is, the legal tender in South Africa. I would propose that we don't do that. For a few good reasons. The first being that the pound is soon to disappear. So we need to back it with something real. Now historically, money has been backed by gold, but that's very expensive. But there's no reason we couldn't back a currency with silver. Quite simple. So that every pound produced is backed by a pound of silver. Not a pound in weight, but a value. There's lots of advantages to using silver. Now you wouldn't need to carry around a purse stuffed with silver coins and ingots. We could produce notes. Security printing's relatively simple these days. And each note backed by silver held in vaults. I understand that there are pirates out there who would love to carry around a purse stuffed with silver ingots and coins, but the majority of people understand banknotes, and that's something we should continue with. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. So we could introduce a currency, we could have it backed by something real. It doesn't have to be digital. These things are precarious. A real currency, backed by a real commodity, that we could use as cash. Sounds good. And it's exactly what they don't want us to have. I understand there'll be questions. I hope there's questions. Put them in the comments. And I hope you've got ideas. Put them in the comments. Let's get this discussion started. And as I said, the biggest reason these things usually don't last or don't work very well is because people don't use them. I would use it. I know people out there listening to this who are plumbers. Use it. The beauty of something like this is you can use it for people that accept it, and you can cash it in. So if you buy £10 worth, you could cash it in and get your £10 back, or whatever currency they're going to introduce to control you. But this is not only viable, not only possible, but it's going to be needed. So at least let's have the discussion. At least let's talk about how we could do it, how we could introduce it, who would use it. Because when cash is gone, it may be too late to start it. If we get the ball rolling now, we're up and running. We're ahead of the field. It's time we all remembered what they're capable of. We should never forget. We should never forgive. And it's time we start fighting back and beat them. And this is one way we can do it. I'll speak to you all, people. Speak to you soon.